All right, guys. So we are going to get ready to start week number 2 of the Live Your Best Life Lifestyle Challenge. Pretty excited about this week. This is going to be all about micronutrients, macronutrients, timing, really diving into the diet a little bit more now that we kind of have an idea what we should be eating and what we're not eating. So first, what is staying the same? You're going to eat from the same foods list. You're still going to receive points for meals, the fish oil, water, exercise, but we are going to change a couple things. What's going to be added? We're going to be trying 3 different micronutrients as well as tracking macronutrients. And so the idea here is just to kind of explore different micronutrients. You'll receive a list of those, which we'll talk about at the end. And then you can try as many as you want, but I'd like you to at least try 3 different ones that kind of perk your interest or maybe what you feel you may be missing. And then we are going to be working on tracking macronutrients using MyFitnessPal. How to track macronutrients. You can use any device or service you prefer. I personally like using MyFitnessPal, which is what I will be setting you guys up with. It's a free service and it will easily record and display macronutrients and some of your micronutrients. What are macronutrients? Macro, large nutrients. It just means that these in large are what we're actually eating. They consist of carbohydrates, fats or lipids, and protein. They are the main source of energy and rebuilding and are all fundamental to a healthy state for the body. So these are going to be our main points of interest this week. Carbohydrates, if we look at each one of these as energy consumed, carbohydrates are equal to 4 kcals, and you can just think of that as each calorie you can take and use as a unit of energy. Carbohydrates is equal to 4. Most of you are aware of the term of carbs and often refer to pasta, bread, and rice, but carbs are also primarily in vegetables and root vegetables. The carbohydrates you're being asked to eat throughout the challenge are also nutrient-dense carbohydrates, unlike that Coors Light. It is a rule of thumb that the darker the vegetable, the higher the nutrient count, specifically phytonutrients, which are also good for free radicals. Fats, lipids are also called lipids. Its energy on fats is equal to 9 kcals. So what that means is that for every unit of fat that you eat, the energy in that unit is a lot more. So if I eat 50 calories or 50 grams of fats compared to 50 grams of carbohydrates, I'm getting more than double the energy from it. Fat has gotten a bad name in the last 50 years due to incomplete studies and the resulting studies based off of those original false findings. So what that just means is there's been like this onslaught of fat on fat, saying that we need less fat, and however, fat is essential. Without it, we would still be living in the trees, as our frontal cortex wouldn't have developed, receiving the huge amounts of energy needed to develop. So they theorize that because we were able to, one, fish and get all these good fats from either fish or avocados or whatever, what have you, other animal sources, that gave us enough energy to where we were able to take the additional energy we did not need and for our brain to actually start to develop. On to protein. So protein, we all know about protein. Everyone wants to take protein shakes and everything else, and most likely you're finding that maybe you're not eating enough protein, or at least this week maybe we'll find that. Protein are building blocks. The energy in protein is worth or is equal to 4 kcals. Proteins are the building blocks and are essential for muscle development and sustainability. Proteins are primarily found in animal products. Some vegetables and legumes also have protein, but are often much less than that found in animal sources. Proteins are also called amino acids, some of which the body will produce on its own. Others are considered essential and must be consumed. So anytime you hear essential minerals or essential amino acids, these are vitamins, minerals that are or nutrients that we must consume. We cannot produce on our own. So balancing the macronutrients. All macronutrients must be consumed and balanced. The standard American diet or SAD has emphasized consumption of carbohydrates, which has been the foundation of the food pyramid for the last 50 years. You guys know this if you went or in elementary school and were taught, or even high school taught about the food pyramid. The bottom was always carbohydrate based, and it was whole grains and all this other stuff. This is largely in cooperation with agricultural lobbyists selling commodity crops. So the government then takes money from these lobbyists, and then they say that the grains are what we need to primarily be eating, and this is going to help with our cholesterol and our fat. And unfortunately, as we're all finding out, these studies and this advice is horribly misguiding. Carbohydrates were or are considered the main energy source for humans, but the truth remains that carbohydrates are a weak source of energy when compared to fat. Carbs equals 4 kcals, fat equals 9. That is the most efficient of energy for humans. So this is why when you consume more carbohydrates than needed, it is stored as fat. So what's right for me? The age-old question. There is no prescription for any human. It is largely based on goals and your gene makeup. Don't worry, I'm not going into genetics here. Tracking caloric consumption and macronutrient percentages, as well as body composition and energy levels and performance, is the only way to determine what may be right for you. So all that means is that by taking measurements and collecting metrics on how our bodies are performing and are adhering to the prescription, is the only way to know what's going to be right for us. But it starts with tracking our food and our consumption. So we need to start there first. Just really quick to kind of give you an idea here, your basal metabolic rate, or your BMR, refers to the calories your body burns to function at base level. This means keeping the brain working, nervous system responding, and heart pumping, as well as breathing and all the other fundamental parts of being alive. An example of this, and I use myself, a male 6'4" at 210 pounds, 35 years old, requires an average of 2,100 calories just to function properly. So you can imagine that if I only eat 1,700 calories throughout the day, something's going to have to give. This could be cell reproduction, the ability to actually heal properly. It could get to the point where my brain starts to feel foggy. I'm not actually able to function, my cognitive abilities go down. There's a lot to this, but this is just an average. An example for a female, 5'5", 135 pounds, 35 years old, requires an average of 1,400 calories just to function properly. You can go online and find one of these calculators and just enter the basics, but you can imagine that here, depending on what I also have stored in my body already, on average is 2,100 calories. However, if I have additional fat stores, my body then can pull from that. So while we think of this as 2,100 calories I need to absolutely have each day, the body has a backup mechanism, and it will start to use fat stores. So this is where the whole concept of calories in, calories out comes in. However, I'm not a huge fan of that concept because people then will go to starving themselves. We need to remember that we have to get nutrients. Nutrients are very important. We'll get into that in just a moment. So it's not by just taking away, but we need to think of the quality of our nutrients that are going in. Not only that, but if I want to build muscle, which ultimately is going to burn more fat, I need to eat more than that. So this is your baseline. And everyone should go on, use a calculator online and figure out what their baseline is. You may find, most people will, that they are eating far below that baseline. So what does this mean? It's kind of what I was just going through. It means if you do anything other than lay on the ground all day, you require more calories than your average BMR requirements. Many of us are not getting enough, sending us into a state of stress. The body's going to stress out, not knowing what to do. It starts to then eat away at itself to then continue to perform and keep the vital organs doing what they need to do. But then stress also takes the food that we do consume and stores it as fat because it's in that stressed state. So it's going to store stuff away as a defense mechanism because it does not know if it's going to get the food that it needs to function properly. And so things like building muscle are going to be the last priority when it comes to the brain being able to function. So just an idea there, how that works. All right, so how many calories should I have? Again, that depends on your goals, but I don't recommend falling below your BMR. Instead of thinking how many, think high quality and timing it correctly, which we're going to get into now. Macro ratios. Again, to perfect macro ratio consumption, you must test and retest. However, here is a basic roadmap. If you want to lose body fat, carbohydrates should be at 25%, potentially lower, depending on how you feel. You could drop this all the way down to 15%, depending on how much food you're actually eating. Fats, I usually prescribe at 35%, and then protein at 40%. So once you understand how much you need to be eating, then you can start to look at how many grams. And again, MyFitnessPal will help you build all of this and makes it very simple. If you want to gain muscle, carbohydrates are potentially a little bit higher at 35%, fat is 30%, and protein is 35%. That again depends, and so we want to constantly be testing this. For an example, myself, I usually have my carbohydrates are usually below 20%, sometimes 15%. My fat is much higher, it's around 45%, and then my protein, I'm trying to get at least 250 grams in a day. So you can kind of play around with this, and that's the purpose of this week, is to explore this a little bit. So it's an individual game. Remember, this is a basic guide and will be subject to energy, expenditure, and goals. Someone who works a physical job 8 hours a day will be different than someone who sits at a desk. You must determine what works best for you through testing. So what about this timing thing? What we eat and when matters. This is my rule of thumb and it has worked well. Eat fat and protein in the mornings. Eat carbohydrates during the day, specifically after physical activity. Vegetables and proteins at dinner. Keep the eating window within 12 to 14 hours, meaning if I start eating at 6 a.m., I should be done eating at 6 a.m. or 6 p.m. Why fats in the morning? When you wake in the morning, you are rising from a fast. That's why we call it break fast. Give your body a good source of fats and your energy will stay level throughout the day because that's what it's first going to be introduced to and that's what it's going to use for its energy source. No more roller coaster rides of energy, no more crashing mid-morning. If we have sugars right away in the morning, that's the first thing that's going to be burned and it burns very fast. So if we have fruit or bread or oatmeal or any of that, what's going to happen throughout the day is the body is going to constantly be searching for that easy source of energy again. So what we want to do is introduce it to a high quality fats and proteins right away in the morning so it can use that and then be stable throughout the day. I recommend eating protein at every meal. So protein should be present at every meal, including snacks. This will help keep the blood sugar levels even, as well as help you consume the right amount of protein. Many people will ask me, how in the world are they going to eat that much protein? And an easy answer is that you need to eat protein at every meal. If you eat protein at every meal, you'll find that it's not very difficult. Carbohydrates after physical activity. Carbohydrates turn into glucose, the primary energy source during physical activity, and help refuel muscle cells in the liver after a workout. If they are not needed to refuel glucose because there's not energy expenditure and the muscle cells and liver are filled up, it is turned into body fat for storage. So it has to go somewhere. The body is going to either use it to refill or use it to expend. If it does not need it, it's going to store it, and the easiest way for it to be stored is body fat. And that's why sugars, carbohydrates are sugars. Sugars are then stored as fat. And so if we are eating a high carbohydrate diet and insulin is trying to store those carbohydrates or that glucose somewhere, the easiest way for it to store is to turn it into body fat. Micronutrients. Micronutrients are fundamental in a properly functioning body, and many will come from eating a healthy diet of meat, fish, vegetables, and fruits. However, because of our current food industry processes, many micronutrients are diluted. Here is a list of micronutrients to consider adding into your diet. If you click on the link here, which I'll also supply in our Facebook group and in an email, if it will pull up, there we go. It's coming. Here it is. You will have a guide of different micronutrients that I recommend to check out. So you can see I have a few in here that are my go-tos. So CoQ10 is one that I love having, especially if I feel fatigue or if I have brain fog. I go to CoQ10. L-glutamine aids in general cellular repair and recovery. So if we're working out a lot, which hopefully we are, L-glutamine is going to help with that. And then magnesium is probably like the first one I end up telling people to go for. It is required in more than 300 chemical processes in the body, and most people are deficient due to poor amounts in the soil. You can check that out and see, try those. You can take a look at the different vitamin D and D3s, which if we're getting enough sun, we don't need, and hopefully we're getting out there and enjoying the outdoors. We already looked at omega-3 fats, but take a look at this, read through, and let me know what you guys think, or if you need any additional guidance there. And back to our there we go. All right. So, just a reminder, it's a science. So understanding your body and testing it is the only way to optimize your nutrition, but following these guidelines will assist you in your journey. Should you ever want to dive deeper, Ruston Creek CrossFit offers nutrition coaching for performance, weight loss, and wellness. So it's not easy. It takes a lot of time to kind of nail this down, but eventually you create an awareness with your body that allows you to feel what you may need. And not only that, but if we're eating a nutrient-dense diet, you're also going to find that some things that you may need at that time, you'll start to crave. For instance, when my vitamin A is low, I crave liver, and that's because it's high in vitamin A. So that's just an example, and it's a weird thing to crave, but when I crave it, I have to eat it, and then I feel so much better. So again, it's a journey. Everyone is different. Our genetics are different. So we have to start testing, and that's what this week is going to be all about. Thank you guys for tuning in for this week's PowerPoint presentation. Everyone is doing great. I'm really having a great time with this challenge. I hope you are too. Keep up the good work. Keep supporting everyone else. Let's make this 6 weeks really count and change our lives for the better. Thank you.